Hey, and welcome back to the cafe for yet another dig of the Soul of an Artist excavation. Now, I had some questions about this, and I figured it would be a great opportunity to throw it into this excavation so that we could dig for a little treasure concerning what is the best background to work on. So today we're going to explore a little bit of working on a laser print background versus an original versus an inkjet. And I must apologize, you guys. I was staining some papers with dye, and I should have put gloves on because clearly the papers weren't the only thing that got stained. But so sorry for the distraction of that. But let's go ahead and move forward now. So on this laser print and the inkjet prints, what I've done is I've made two copies, and one is we're going to work on just plain straight from the printer, and the other we're going to do a Liquitex matte medium over top of this to seal everything in. Now, a couple things between lasers and inkjets. Let me show you this. So same thing, and here's what's really funny. This is the same exact print, and this one's from my laser printer, and this one is from my inkjet printer. I finally broke down and invested in a laser printer just because I love the quality, and I love the what I really love about laser prints is that the ink does not move. It is made of a polymer, and it literally fuses to the paper. Now, inkjet is ink, and it sits more on top of the paper, so when you go to work on inkjets, the ink will reactivate most of the time. With most printers, you can get away with some stuff, but a lot of times it will reactivate. So I went ahead and printed one of each on each one so that we can just play around a little bit. And then of course I've got eco-dyed original here, and this is the other side of this one. Back when we did how to alter your eco, it was either how to alter your eco dyes or how to grunge up your eco dyes, and then we did 3 ways to edge your artwork on these as well. So I love the other side of this original, and this is on Canson mixed media paper. Just in case you're curious, I like Canson watercolor paper and mixed media paper. It is my go-to paper. I really, I love Arches, of course, but I don't love the price. Strathmore is okay. I don't find that my paints move as well on Strathmore as they do on Canson. So you've got to kind of play around and find what works best. But for eco dyeing, I really like to use Canson mixed media printer paper, although printer paper is tough. This is a little off topic, but that's okay. And then Canson watercolor paper works well for eco dyeing as well. Just a little side note for you. So the first thing I want to do today is I've got my little 8x10 jelly plate, and it looks dirtier than it is. I actually cleaned up this side for this little demo. And the first thing I want to do is do these 2 prints here that I've written on the Liquitex, and I just wanted to show you real quick how I do it. I'm using the Liquitex Professional Matte Medium. I love this product for this. I've done this with inkjets a lot in the past. I've just never shown it. So Lynn did ask the questions if I didn't mention that earlier. So thank you, Lynn. Very good questions. And this is, as a Soul of an Artist excavation, we have so much experimenting and exploring to do when it comes to our artwork, and to figure out what works best and what doesn't work for us. And that's the beauty of just being able to play with different products and different techniques in the art world, you know, it's such a treasure hunt to me. But, you know, pretty much everything's a treasure hunt to me. So I love to explore different ways of doing things, and I love to get to know my products and my papers, because when you know how a certain thing is going to behave, you know how far you can push it. Okay, so the laser, now this has a bit of a sheen just because of the nature of the polymers in the ink. I don't even know if you could really call it ink. But so the benefit of doing this on a laser print is to knock that sheen down. So you just want to get good adhere, just get it to adhere nicely, and then we'll set this aside to dry. And we'll go ahead and do a little more, and you'll get, I haven't done this in a while. Oops, that's a little too much. But you'll get a really good gauge of how much product to use. And, you know, I struggle with the prices of some of this stuff, so it's nice to not overdo it. You want a nice consistent layer, of course, just like most things with the jelly plate. But you don't want too little because it won't cover your piece completely. And you don't want too much because, well, you might want a little more is better than too little, because you're gonna get some texture. There are some lines. I don't know if the camera is picking that up, but here we go with the inkjet. Now, inkjets already start out matte, and I love that. I wish I could just work on top of inkjet prints. Oh, and by the way, I don't think I mentioned it, but my inkjet has sat. Let me put this down. When I got my laser printer, I quit using my inkjet for a good month. And the inks sat, okay? So this is the same print, believe it or not, but the inks sat and pooled in my inkjet printer and went unused for a while. And look at the difference of a print I got. I think they're both beautiful. In frame, I far prefer this one. So, you know, this is part of a drawback of inkjet printers to me. So I just want to really get good adherence here on this, especially the inkjet. It's very important to get full coverage. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and let these dry, and then I will be back and we'll play around and see what happens. Okay, so now that these are dry, for the purposes of this video, I want to go ahead and just use 3 colors. I'm using my Artist's Loft, blah, 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 Flow Acrylic Black Paint, and I've also got the same in white right here, and then I've got a little tiny bit of Golden Titan Buff here, and then I also pulled out my Bombay Black ink, and let me move this. This is Tattered Angels Color Wash Tint, and this is a one-step water-based tint. Now, what I've done is this just comes in a regular bottle, and I went ahead and put it in an eyedropper bottle just so that I could have the dropper to apply it more easily. Now, we're going to just do a few things. Now, here's the laser print. This one is the Liquitex. And another question Lynn had asked me was, does your paper bow? So I want to address that real quick here. Okay, these are some, I just have paper, Canson Mixed Media on canvas board that I had taped. And what I was doing was just getting some initial color on these little boards. And these are all videos that will be coming down the road. And every single one of these bowed, okay? This bigger one stayed a little bit bowed, and I'm gonna have to, as you can see, there's a line here where the tape separated. So I'm gonna have to pull this piece of tape and put a new one down before I do this artwork if I wanna keep my border clean on this one. Now with these smaller pieces, they all bowed very bad. Because I got them really wet, but all the tape stayed sealed around the borders, and as these dried, they flattened out. I never worry about bowing paper. It happens to me all the time, but my solution is, first of all, let stuff dry, because when you let stuff dry between layers, then you have a little bit better luck at that point of having it flatten out. And then number two, if it doesn't flatten out all the way, iron it. That's what I do. I just put it between a couple pieces of linen and iron it flat. So that's how I deal with bowed paper, and I definitely deal with it. So I'm sitting here talking, looking on my messy table, and I've got a piece of corrugated cardboard. So let's go ahead and keep this handy as well. I'm only going to be using a couple tools. I've got my fan brush because I want to do some spatter on these papers. I've just got a little old card here for paint, and then I've got my brayer and this piece of cardboard. So let's go ahead and start off, and what I want to do is I'm going to take the lasers and I'm just going to do the same application on both pieces. I think what I'm going to do is try to just do the same application on everything all the way across. So right now I'm just going to grunge this up a little bit with some black paint, and I'm really liking this leaf right here, so I want to try to keep that in play a bit. And this is nothing fancy. We just want to see what kind of reactions we end up getting from this. I've always got stuff in my way. Okay, so with the laser, the paint is looking a little tiny bit different. And I did want to point out real quick before I forget, let me grab these Inkjets. Okay, so this dried, and as you can see, the colors got more intense with the matte medium over top. It just kind of like really made everything a bit deeper and a little bit richer. So this one's a little bit more muted down. So I did notice that difference. And the same thing happened here to a very small degree. You can see this bright yellow here and the blue. It just, this one got a little bit more intensified with the matte medium. But if you don't have them sitting next to each other, you'd really never know. You'd just never know. Let's do the same thing with our card with some Titan Buff. We're just not going to see a lot of change here on the laser, but it's still fun to experiment and see what is happening. That is so funny. Experiment. Sometimes words come out of my mouth in a way that I do not intend. I'm sure I'm not alone. This plate is not the best. I like to use my little jelly plate for a palette because it's flat and I can get a lot of this excess paint off of it. So that plate's not the best, but for what we're doing today, it'll be all right. Okay, so we've got those colors on. I'm gonna add a tiny bit more Titan Buff to the matte medium one. Let's just add a tiny bit more here, just to kind of grunge this up a bit. Okay, that's looking kind of nice. See if I can transfer it. Okay, so there's those two. Now let's go ahead and set these aside to dry for a minute. and we'll pull these out. Now, see how this was wet? The paper got bent and bowed. And it is something I deal with all the time. And part of it is because I work on paper so much. Let me bring you in a bit. I don't always work on canvas, and of course you're not going to have that issue with canvas. Okay, this is kind of where the rubber is going to meet the road, so to speak, as far as seeing a difference, at least I think. Now, this paint is not watered down at this point, which is why I want to pull the inks and use these inks a bit, because there's so much more wet, and we're going to spray them too, and that will really show us what we're doing here. Okay, there's the matte one. For this plate, I won't do that again for trying to scrape. That's why I really am attracted to my little jelly plate. I've got so much going on in my studio that things are kind of disrupted and everywhere right now. Oh, I probably shouldn't cover up my writing. Okay. So now here's the unsealed piece. I'm not seeing anything yet. But again, this paint is drier. So we will definitely add some water and really give it a good test. Let's go ahead and do some Tighten Buff on here. Yeah, if you have a flat palette, it's so nice because then you don't get clumps on your card, and you can really control much better. So sometimes I just grab the wrong thing, but it's okay. All right, so we've got that now, and let's set these aside and let them dry. Kind of have to shimmy stuff around. Okay, so now we've got our original. This was such a fun project to do. I really enjoyed it thoroughly, and I love altering the eco dies. So this got some paint on it already, which is fine. Let's get some more on here. Now, my originals, my eco dies always bow because they go through a cooking process, and I do iron them, and they never come completely flat really ever again. So I've got this pretty leaf here and this pretty leaf here. They're all over, so, but these two I kind of want to keep them where you can see them maybe a little bit. Look at how pretty. I love working on originals. In fact, I think working on originals is probably my favorite of the three. Now, it also varies what paper you print on. Keep that in mind. If you're using cheaper printer paper, your paper is going to buckle a lot more, a whole lot more. It's just part of the deal. And the thicker the paper, and then it's very difficult to print on watercolor paper. I don't do it because it's such a headache. It messes up your printer. It can really create some big headaches for me, at least it has in the past. So I don't even try, but I can print cans and mixed media paper no problem with my printers, and I also print a lot on cardstock. Now, speaking of that, all four of these, I'm glad I brought that up, all four of these are printed on cardstock, so I did not use printer paper, and as you can see, the cardstock, the Canson, everything buckles. It's just been part of my art journey, okay? So now we've got some white here, and I think we're going to use that for spatter. And I'm not sure we're going to use the brayer. We may not. Let's shimmy around here, back to the lasers. Yikes, I've got everything taken up here. Okay, so of course the Liquitex matte medium has all of the inks have stayed in place. I really shouldn't call it ink. It's polymer. So and I expected it to all stay, so these are almost unrecognizable as a difference. But let's do this. Let's take a little bit of, let's do the Tattered Angels, because this is a water activated, and it if it's going to move stuff around, it's going to move it around more than the Bombay ink. So what I want to do, the other thing you're going to want to have handy is a little squirt bottle, okay? So we've got that here. And then I'm going to take the laser print first, and I'm just going to do a little row of this over top. And then I'm going to give it a nice squirt. Just kind of let that ink move. Now what I'm noticing, first of all, I'm noticing I need a paper towel. What I'm noticing is that this ink is very much so, get in frame. I'm so sorry, you guys. Gosh, I try to get better at that, and I just, it's one of my challenges. So I'm noticing that the ink is staying on top of the print quite a bit. So I'm going to spray this down a little bit more just to make it move. For fun, I'm going to set this aside, and since we're working on this one here, let's add some black. I like how it colored the leaf a little bit, but you can still see the leaf through the ink. Now I'm going to keep the black just on the other side so that I can see what happens. And I don't want very much. I want this really light. So I'm going to do the same thing. Just run that across and then give it a squirt. I'm going to wet the page a little so that it can kind of move. Wow. Got quite a bit of movement. So I'm not happy with the big giant blob. I probably should have done quite a bit less, but the water will disperse that. Let's move it around a little. There we go. I love that look, but I don't want it just a dark, big mass of black. I'm going to grab another paper towel here. Okay, so that is quite lovely. I'm going to go ahead and set this aside for a sec. And we're going to do the same exact thing to the one without the matte medium. And then I think I will hit these with my dryer. And of course, I'll just go ahead and do that off camera. Now that I know this is going to be translucent, I'm going to go across over here with this. Wow, okay, that just kind of pulled and sat like I put it on plastic because it is plastic. Yeah, wow, totally different. So without the matte medium, it beat it up, and look, it soaked right into the paper and did not move. So that's a very valuable thing to know about this on a laser printer. Try to get some drip. It completely soaked in and it's going nowhere. And I bet that the same thing is going to happen with the black. I'm going to do less than I did. I hope you guys can see this okay. Now, whenever you go over the paint, it's going to do magical, beautiful things. But the same thing happened up here on my laser print with both of these products. They soaked immediately into the paper and they stained the paper completely opaque with that color, and it's not going anywhere. Now, the black ran right down the page, and that's probably because I had the Titan buff on this side, and then this is pooling in interesting ways on this side. But it ruined the top of my leaf, and good to know. So thank you, Lynn, for asking these questions, because I had a pretty good idea of what was going to happen, but I didn't know exactly how it was going to go. So I'm really glad that we're taking this opportunity now to experiment with this. So that really makes me unhappy. Now, the black, it's drying a little bit and you can see through it, and it's creating this beautiful grungy kind of look to it, and I sprayed it too much on the Titan Buff, so it completely vanished off of there. But look at the difference. Okay, so very good information. Let's move this. If you guys like these kind of videos, I experiment a lot. I don't always do it on camera because I'm not sure that you like this stuff. So let me know if you want to see more stuff like this. Okay, so now here's the difference, and the matte medium really gave me an opportunity to kind of play a little bit more. Now the brown ink is almost non-existent on here. Let's do another drop of this brown, and I'll do very little water this time, and we'll see if we can't keep that color on that page. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of soak up that, let it drip a little. Now we've got that dominant brown streak going, and I'm just going to hit these with my heat gun, and I will be right back. All right, so now I went ahead and grabbed the Inkjets, and I want to do the same exact thing, and I wised up and got my little paint rag here. So let's start with the brown on the matte medium one. Let me set that over there for a sec. And I'm just going to go right over top of that leaf. That's the great thing about prints. If you mess one up, you can always print it again. You can't do that with an original, so that's something to consider. Okay, that pulled very beautifully. I'm even gonna, I kind of want to pick up this ink. Okay. And I'm just gonna let that sit while we do a tiny bit of black. Now, the last time I did the black, oof, very concentrated, so try to keep the water away from the brown. Okay, I love the way it moves on the matte medium. I can already say that for sure. And then I've got this pooling again. I hate to waste it, but it's kind of a gonna mess with our experiment if I keep sopping it up. Okay, so there's that one, and I think I want to dry this again real quick to see if we can keep this brown again, so I'll be right back. Okay, so this is pretty much dry, and I really like on the Inkjet how the matte medium allowed this brown to pool, and then it kept some defined edges so you can see it clearly. And I love this Tattered Angels color wash tint. I get this at Hobby Lobby. I talk about this here on my channel all the time. It's in the craft paint aisle, and it's relatively inexpensive. I really like it a lot, but something I love about it very much is it's translucent, so you can see the layers underneath it, and I just love that. It comes in a lot of different colors and some metallics as well. Now, the black Bombay ink did some beautiful things over top of this Inkjet with the matte medium, and I like how the grungy look of it, but and I knew this was going to happen. Some of your paints will act like a resist to your drips, and it's okay. Just add some more drips, and the more you spray with water, the harder it's going to be to keep that ink on your other paints. And it's just something you got to play around with. No big deal. Okay, this is where it's going to get really interesting. So I'm going to move this stuff out of the way just so we can really focus on this print, and I promise to stay in frame. Jeez Louise. This is where we're going to start. If we're going to start seeing some inks moving around, we're going to see it now. Now, these paints were pretty dry, and they kept their color quite well, but as you can see, this Titan Buff turned a little bit more peachy in little areas, and it is not a peach color at all. So it already activated from the inkjet. So this ought to be very interesting now, and I'm going to be pretty heavy-handed with this. Oh, look, it sunk right in. Hurry. Let's try another. Let's just do that. See what we can get. Okay, it's soaking right into the paper, and that, of course, is to be expected. And then I sprayed this with water, and immediately the detail of the leaf is vanishing before my eyes. So don't like this effect at all. I mean, if you're after it, this is how you get it. And then if you look how it's wicking out, it's activating with those inks. And then here they are totally moving and obliterating. Let me pull it up here. It's really obliterating that leaf print up top. So this is kind of what happens. Now you can get some amazing effects from this, but if you're attached to your background and you want to keep it defined, don't do it this way. Add your matte medium. Now if you don't care that that the colors all pool and move, that is a beautiful, beautiful effect. Now I already know that this is going to do the same exact thing. It's going to soak right into the paper, but let's just do it because we're doing this today. And I am going to give it a squirt just because that's what we've done. I want to stay consistent with the entire experiment. I love art because my favorite thing about it, and the soul of an artist, I have the soul of a scientist. And when you're an artist, you get to play mad scientist. You know, we gather these techniques into our artistic toolbox, but there's always more to gather, and there's always variables and conditions and all of those things, and I just love it so much. Okay, so this did something interesting. It soaked right into the paper, but I hit it really hard up here with water, and so it kept its edges, and it looks very beautiful in this little area right here. And then this totally just soaked right into the paper, but it wicked out in a way that it could only do without the matte medium. So we did not get that wicking with this other product. We got it a little bit, but nothing to the degree of this one here. So that is the difference I am noticing, and it is blending and mingling with the inks underneath. Now when we spatter this with white, that's going to show big time. All the other prints will keep the white, and this one will probably taint the white into a different color. So let's do the original now. This might be kind of a long video, but I think it's worth it, and I think it's important, and I'm so glad that you asked these questions, Lynn, because this is, I just love to, the more I can learn about the behavior of my papers and my substrates and my products that I'm using, the happier I am. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do this half with the Tattered Angels, and I'm going to do this half with the Bombay ink. Same. And I'm going to be a little bit more generous because this is a bigger piece here. So We'll just do one at a time here. I love the way this Tattered Angels wicks out when you spray it. It is some of the most beautiful product. This is driving me nuts having this ink here. Let's take our Inkjet that is really kind of a mess. Look, it's even wicking out more because it's still wet. Let's just soak that up, and then look at the back. The back is telling the tale too. See that? The ink is really coming apart on this one. Okay, so we've added a little extra grunge to this one. All right, so this is just such a beautiful product. I'm really in love with it. It's one of my favorites. It's probably my top favorite for getting drips. I've been using this for quite a while, and it is gorgeous. And now, because it's not, the thing about this water activated product is on the original, it's sinking into the paper, but I'm still able to manipulate it when I spray. You get the thinner papers with less media on them, and it just soaks right into the paper. Now see, the paint is not holding these drips very well. It's holding it down here, but I sprayed up here more, so it sprayed it right off. So keep that in mind. Now let's do the black. Gonna get kind of generous with that. This black, a little goes a long way with your inks, and I'm sure I'm singing to the choir like I always do. Okay, it's a hot mess. Very grungy. I used way too much. See, I even said not to, and look at what I did. I used way too much. So let me get a piece of paper, and I just want to soak this up here. This is Canson mixed media paper also. I always like to have extra paper handy just for these kinds of things. So I'm gonna sop up some of this onto here. Now that's the start of a beautiful little page too. I'm running out of room. Okay, I used way too much, so should have listened to my own self. But let's spray it and get some more movement out of here. Yeah, I would have done really well with just a couple tiny drops on there. I've got another paper here. Gonna try to soak up a lot of that. I bet it's really going through. I kind of don't want to lose my drips, so I'm going to stay away from that. Oh, that's lovely. Okay, these papers are coming out more fun than the experiment. I better stop that. So good at getting sidetracked. Okay, so let me go ahead and dry this, and I'll be right back. Now this one's mostly dry, and as you can see, the brown soaked into the paper and wicked a tiny bit, but it did give me the drips and stayed put. And then the black really obliterated everything, and then the drips came out really beautiful. Now I could have patted at this and lightened it up. As you can see right here, in quite a few places you can see the paint underneath the ink. So if you get too much of a concentration, just have some extra paper handy. That's what I like to use. I don't like to mop everything up with my paint rag if I can help it. I like to mop most of my stuff up with another piece of paper. And speaking of which, here are these. They came out really beautiful. These will make a great base for a couple more art projects. So I just like to have stuff laying around. So now the eco dyeing, these get cooked, they get rinsed, they go through a major process in the eco dyeing process. So I know that when I go to work on this, my background's not going to move because I have already rinsed the heck out of this page before it came to this stage. So there's a little side note there. Now let's do, for fun, let's do a little bit of this corrugated cardboard here, and let's go ahead and use the white because that's what I have left here. And I'm starting off with my laser prints, I should say. So here's the matte medium, and I'm just going to throw it on in one area on each one of these and set it aside. I like to get my paint on here kind of thick because it soaks into that cardboard and dries really fast. And I'm just going to do it in the same place on all 4 of these prints, and we'll see what we get. We'll do it a little differently on the original, but we'll do the original as well. Now this inkjet is very wet, and as you can see, the image underneath is mostly obliterated, but the color is beautiful. The colors are really much brighter green because they've been mixed together and pulled together and reactivated. And this inkjet is holding that background image beautifully with the Liquitex matte medium on it. Okay. This is such fun, and I want to thank you guys. I hit 5,000 subs, and I'm so excited about it. And if you like what I'm doing, you know, it helps me a bunch to hit the like and hit the subscribe and comment. And, you know, I always answer questions. And if you have questions deep enough, I will do a video. I will say this, my video schedule is pretty far out, but I don't mind throwing stuff in, you know. Sometimes we need something to shake up the norm. So don't be afraid to ask me questions. I love to answer. Okay, so let's do this same exact place. I'm really gonna push hard on this one, because this is where the rubber is going to meet the road, is on this print. Okay, let's set these aside and do our original. And then I think I'll step away and dry everything again, and then we'll end with some spatter. Okay, maybe I'll do this in a couple different places on this page because it's so big. So let's do that. Let's just throw it around. I love corrugated paper. I love to use it in this way in my artwork, and I also love to use the paper itself in collage. I haven't been doing that a whole lot lately, but I definitely want to do more of it. So let's throw a little bit both directions here. See what we can get. Okay, that's pretty cool right there. So I know everything's gonna stay put on this, and then it's got some nice, because the paint is a little bit thinner, it's got some really nice grungy texture in areas where you can see the colors underneath, and it'll really be apparent when it's dry. So I'm gonna make sure at the end of this video, we're playing around right now and making a mess, but at the end of this video, I'm gonna make sure and show you everything completely dry so that you can get a very good gauge as to what's happening. Okay, before I dry these, I'm gonna go ahead, just to speed things along, I'm going to go ahead and do the white spatter. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is wet this down. This paint, this Artist's Loft Flow Acrylic, they call it Flow Acrylic, but it's really, I think they should call it a heavy-bodied acrylic. It's quite thick, so I may need to add some more of it. But for this, it should work. Let's go ahead. Now, this is the laser print. This side is the matte. Let's really concentrate it on the opposite side of the corrugated cardboard. And I'm going to mix a little bit more real quick and water it down. I like shorter videos. I like to keep my videos shorter, but sometimes, you know, there's a lot to be said for talking through a video. And a lot of the artists that I love to watch, they talk through their videos. Sometimes they play music. I like both. I like music. If I don't like the music, I'll just mute the video, of course. But I don't want to talk through every video I make, and the reason why is because they become longer. Sometimes I don't know when to quit talking. That's part of it. Okay, so we'll let those sit and dry. The space situation is a bit of a challenge for me here. But it's all right. We don't fret over the small stuff. There's big enough stuff in life to worry about, is there not? Oh my goodness. I was watching Foil the other day and she was talking about how the world has gone mad, and I couldn't agree more. Ugh, and that's all I'm gonna say about it. Let's paint. That's my solution. Truly is. Okay, here's our inkjet with the matte medium, and I'm going heavy because I want to see what happens. I have an educated guess. This one I really want to hit hard. But an educated guess is not a for sure, is it? Okay, let me set these. I almost want to sit here, but it's going to be like watching grass grow, so we're not going to do that. I'll show it to you dry. I really think that the inks are going to mingle with the white paint on that one, and they're going to change it up quite drastically. Okay, this is going to be the last step on this for this experiment. Oh, look at that page. I love working on, I have to say, guys, originals are my favorite kind of paper to work on. Originals that have been messed with, either painted or eco-dyed or whatever, base coated, it really doesn't matter to me. But I prefer originals over prints. But you just can't always do that. So, you know, I love to do a lot of photography. And with photography, everything you use is a print, so you never even get an original unless, of course, you do old school film development, which I'm not doing that. I'm far too spoiled for that today. So originals are my favorite to work on. So let me get everything really dry and we'll go over our findings. Be right back. Okay, so these are all dry now, and this is our laser print, and this is the Liquitex matte medium, and this is without. Now the matte medium, the inks played so much better on this sheet with the matte medium. Here it soaked right into the paper and it beat it up down here, which is a pretty nice effect, but it really does obliterate pretty much everything in its path. Up here, I really don't like how that came out up there, but if you're after this beaded effect, you can get it in this way. Now, these spatters over here on top of the Tattered Angels ink, the tint, they changed color because the tint is a water activated product. So whenever you spatter on top of something water activated, that's what's going to happen with that. Now this over here kept its color pretty well. And the reason I think that to be true is because on this one, that Tattered Angels soaked right into the paper, and on the matte medium, it sat more on top of the matte medium. So I think that's what happened there. Now, I didn't get any discoloration in my paint in either one of these other than the spatter right there. The corrugated cardboard markings came out beautifully. They held their color beautifully, and all of the grunge markings I really love. And you know, these are, I'm so excited about the way these came out, and they're not very big, but I'm gonna go ahead and scan them and then use them in collage. So let's move on now to the Inkjet. This is going to be one of my longest videos to date. It's okay though, it's good to have the information. Okay, so with the Liquitex matte medium, this side held the background beautifully. Everything stayed in place. All of the inks stayed in place. And you can tell none of the inks, you know, a few of the black inks soaked through, but the actual print ink did not soak through the paper because that matte medium created the barrier, of course. Now, same thing here. Our spatter got a little bit altered here and there where this brown is, so that tells me it's because it's sitting on top of the matte medium, and so it was still able to be activated. Now, if you want to guard against that, the way to do that would, of course, to be put another layer of matte medium down before you spatter. I don't mind that so much. I really love where the white kept its true color down here and then changed as it fell into the path of the tattered angels. I like the interest and variation of that. Now, the corrugated cardboard held really well. The Titan Buff held its color beautifully. Everything stayed together on the Inkjet with the matte medium. Now, of course, we've got a completely different story with the Inkjet that's just plain. It's still beautiful. I really love how this one came out too, but the inks do funny things. These colors turned very pastel all through here, and if you like pastel, it's perfect. I like the way these colors played, but look at this. Okay, here is the difference. This is the magic of the Liquitex liquid matte medium, and it's the fluid one. You know, this is very liquidy here. It's not the heavy-bodied stuff. So I have never used the heavy body to mask anything, and I wouldn't, simply because it's too thick and it's too expensive. I mean, if it's all I had and I had to water it down a little, that's the only way I would use the heavy stuff. So this got very pastel looking, and the same thing happened here that happened with our laser print that did not have the matte medium. The tattered angels soaked in so quickly into the paper that the white spatter kept its color, and I'm very surprised at how much of this white spatter kept all of its color. I have done this before on inkjet prints where my spatter completely changed color and wicked out and danced with the ink from the inkjet, and sometimes it's okay and sometimes it's really awful, so it's a gamble. And then this turned pink right here, this white. My Titan Buff turned peachy pink in a few areas as well, and that's because it reactivated that inkjet ink. So very worthwhile little experiment here. Here's our lasers, and let's take a look at our original. So with our original, there was no matte medium on here to begin with, and same thing, a lot of these places where I think I did it this way. Let's get it the way I had it. Here, let's do this. Okay, much better. So where the spatter hit the tattered angels, it got a little tiny bit grungy, but not bad. And then the white spatter on top of the black ink pretty much held its color, because this black ink, once it dries, it's permanent and it's not going to be water activated. Now all of the white, of course, kept its color. Any paint that I would have went over this tattered angels is subject to to being altered. So great experiments today. I hope you enjoyed this. I actually really love how this page came out. Using eco dyes is so magical for to make your mixed media collage papers, and you really don't have to use an original. I prefer the originals, but there are artists out there that I love their printables. Robin McClendon, Susan Taylor Brown. There are some just phenomenal printables out there, and of course I'll never have access to their originals, and if I did, I'd probably be scared to death to paint on somebody else's original. I will only do that to my own. But look at the results you can get on the prints. It's really, you can do all three of these. So I really hope that you guys experiment with this and mess around. I definitely like that the colors of the prints, even though this is the same print and it was totally different, I like how the colors stayed the same on the laser, and I like how they stayed the same on the one with the matte medium, the inkjet. And this is still beautiful, but knowing that it started off like this, I prefer this much more. So I hope you found this little experiment helpful in your future mixed media artwork, and I will see you real soon. Have a great day.